Good morning and welcome. Yes, I'm Nancy Holland, your service leader this morning, and joined by a familiar guest, Bob Clegg, who has been here before. And Bob's a member of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Frederick, so you probably know now Carl Gallegos. He's part of your congregation now, right? Carl? No? Okay.
Work on that.
All right. Bob's a lay community minister. He has a Master's of Divinity from Wellesley Theological Seminary and is also a graduate certificate in nonprofit management from American University. And his day job is as the executive director of Justice Jobs of Maryland, which is located in Frederick, and is a free nonprofit employment office helping people to get jobs or to move up to better jobs. Bob and his wife Connie live in Newmarket with a somewhat spoiled cat named Lily. And we welcome Bob back to our pulpit this morning. And also thank all the others who are listed in your order of service who helped to make today possible. Our mission at UUCR is to inspire, inform, and support all who seek spiritual growth and a more equal and just community. No matter who you are, no matter where you are on your spiritual or life journey, please know that you are welcome here, in person or virtually. We strive to be a welcoming and inclusive community, working toward the goal of widening our circle and welcoming everyone to the table. And we say hi to those who are joining us on Zoom this morning back there. I have a couple of announcements. We always need coffee hosts and greeters. There's a new schedule through February on the whiteboard in the lobby, so please sign up. It's a great way to get to know people and do a small time-limited job that helps our congregation. Also, Linda Weimer this morning. Linda, you want to just, yes. Linda has tickets to the Martin Luther King breakfast, which would be Monday, January 16th at Washington College. I think they're $20.
Yes.
Yeah. They can also be bought online, but you can pick them up from Linda either this Sunday or next Sunday. The Stewardship Committee would like to announce that the campaign kickoff will be on Sunday, February 5th, with an in-person presentation of next year's proposed budget by our own Jim Lavin. This will be after the service. Our theme this year is Widening Our Path, Welcoming All. And we hope that you can plan to be at that service and remain for the Stewardship Kickoff Drive. And the final announcement is just a reminder to please to remain today after the service for a very important informational meeting about a very amazing bequest that we have received from Doris Scott, a former member. And now please join me as we light the chalice. The words are in your order of service. Light this chalice
as a symbol of the light within all creation. We light this chalice for truth. May the search for truth be with us always. We light this chalice for love. May the love for others be strong in our hearts.
Okay, I had a few little last minute changes here, so hoping I get this right. So I welcome you all back this morning. We, other than Eve of the Eve and the full moon rising, we haven't met in this space for several weeks. So welcome everybody back after your winter break and as we look forward to a new year. And let's see, that's where that is. So Bob sent me some really interesting advice, best advice you got last year. This was from the New York Times readers, apparently. The Times asked the question, and readers sent in their advice. So this is last year's people's best advice, but maybe it will be useful for us. So one response was, stop and recognize the happy moments when you're in the middle of when you're in the middle of them. Literally stop and say out loud, this is a happy time. It's a way to ground yourself in the joyful parts of your life. We do this with moments of trauma and crisis all the time, so why not flip the script and acknowledge when we're happy? A second response, if there's an issue bothering me, I think to myself, will this still be an issue in a week or a month? If the answer is no, it's a small problem. I let the stress go and move on. I think that's probably good advice for all of us. And number 3 was a suggestion to put 10 pennies in your left pocket and find something for which you're grateful. Move 1 penny to your right pocket every time there's something to be grateful for. And hopefully by the end of the day, all 10 pennies will be in the other pocket. And also, I think in recognition of a new year and all that that holds, I like these words that these are adapted from Vinton, Ham to Bright. And I think they are good. Spirit of life, spirit of love, source of energy named and understood in so many ways. Help us enter this new year quietly, thoughtfully, thoughtful of who we are to ourselves and to others, mindful that our steps make an impact and our words carry power. This year, may we walk gently. May we speak only after we have listened well. May we enter this new year in reverence, seeing all creation as having beauty and purpose. This year, may we regard the world with tenderness. May we honor rather than destroy. May we enter the year joyfully, willing to dance and to dream. This year, may we take each step in gratitude. May we take each step in peace. May we move courageously together in love. Let's just take a brief moment to think about the year to come. Blessed be. Well, this service, we are going to have a lot of wonderful music. If you've looked ahead, you see that we're going to sing 4 hymns, but don't panic, 3 of them have the same tune. Thanks to Bob. So I've asked, because I don't think we've sung any of these hymns, I've asked Michael to play the first one through once so that we can get and by the 3rd one, we will be perfect, right? So please rise in body or spirit for hymn number 76 in the gray hymnal for flowers that bloom about our feet. our Social Justice Social Action Committee, will be telling us about an outreach group to which we will give our donation this Sunday. So I'd like to have Amy Warner come up and tell us.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
And the focus of the Social Justice Committee's January outreach is on reproductive rights. It will have two components. The first part is an appeal for donations to an organization, just as we've always done, and to which people over the years have, and generally for our outreach collections, people have been very generous. And there's also be an educational opportunity, which is something that the committee is, our goal is to incorporate into our outreach efforts. So the organization we've chosen to support with our collection in January is the Baltimore Abortion Fund. I got this from their website. I'm going to say BAF. The Baltimore Abortion Fund, or BAF, is a mutual aid, grassroots, nonprofit organization that provides financial assistance and practical support to people who live in or travel to Maryland for abortion care. BAF operates a confidential helpline where their case managers help callers pay for their procedures, as well as provide info on how to access abortion care. They provide financial commitments to cover a portion of the caller's care and refer them to health clinics. They also provide support such as transportation service, accommodations, and translators. I spoke with Lynn McCall, who is the Director of Development and Communication at BAF, who told me that since the Supreme Court Dobbs decision in June, the trend has been for people seeking help to choose Maryland as a destination, since it has less restrictive laws. And here are some stats from their newsletter that I just received this week from 2022. In abortion funding, they were able to give out $714,000, almost 3 times what they had given in 2021. Their practical support funding was around $65,000. They received 2,314 calls, plus or minus, plus. Their rides to and from clinics were 218. They met the needs of about 65% of their clients were from Maryland, and then 35% were from other states. They had 85 new volunteers and a total of 122 volunteers. Another thing I learned from Lynn was the BAF has a very small staff, 7 people. 4 of them work directly with clients. I encourage you to check out their website and learn more about their mission and vision. You really learned a lot there. So that's the outreach part. We're asking you to think, if you would like, and decide whether you'd like to donate to this organization throughout the month. I'm very excited about the educational opportunity we're offering. You may know Lauren Harden, who's the who's the daughter of Phil and Linda Dutton. She is a certified nurse midwife who works at Planned Parenthood in Easton. She regularly works with clients who are seeking help with unintended pregnancies and has extensive knowledge of all the aspects of reproductive health, such as the practical and legal obstacles women face, and she knows quite a bit about all the legal facts, all the legal repercussions of the Dobbs decision. Lauren has volunteered to do 2 Zoom sessions about the many issues surrounding women's reproductive rights. So the first one will be on Sunday evening, the 22nd of January from 7 to 8:30. And the second one will be on Thursday from 1:26, from 7 to 8:30. And we'll provide links to those in the newsletter reflections. So we're also hoping that the Unitarian Fellowship down in Easton will be joining us on the Zoom sessions, as Lauren's a member down there. So, yes, Marilee, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I just want to add something. When the committee started talking about this, I decided I didn't want to be talking out of my hat. So I put together a kind of odd little fact sheet because I thought, I think I know things about reproductive rights and abortion, but I'm not sure I do. So I put that out, and it's on a sheet of paper out on the table, and I was consistently surprised at all the bugaboos in my head and how most of them don't seem to actually be true. So I recommend that. And also, Lauren is just such a wonderful person to listen to. She's got Philip and Linda all rolled into one. So don't miss them.
Okay, thanks. So, thank you for your generosity over the years. We really have, the Social Justice Committee has really appreciated everyone's support for these outreach collections that we do. So if for those of you who are newer, I want to just real quickly explain. So everything that goes in the collection today, unless it's a pledge, will go toward the outreach for this month. If you're going to make a check out, make it out to UUCR, and then the line right, the line at the bottom on the left, right, BAF, or outreach collection. You can also donate through our website until the end of the month, or you can give a check during the month to Darlene and make sure it's earmarked for our BAF. Okay, so thank you for your support. Please think about and watch out for the links for the Zoom sessions with Lauren. Thank you so much.
And I will pass the baskets. Thank you for your generosity. These outreach collections are a very focused way that we meet the mission of this community. So thank you. And now is the time that we reserve for sharing our joys and concerns. Those thoughts or cares or joys that we hold deeply in our heart. Our first candle I will light, as always, to acknowledge the terrible and ongoing impact of war, disease, climate change effects, flooding, famine. You listen to the news and it's just so overwhelming. So the first candle is for all those affected by so much tragedy. And then if you have a joy or concern to share, please come up to the mic and I will light a candle for you.
My friend Charles Taylor passed away suddenly Friday night at home. I'm thinking of him and particularly his husband, Jim Bogdan. Both of them have done so much for Chestertown in the 5 years that they've been here.
So Friday night we had a gathering to celebrate the first full moon of the year, and it was followed by a celebration of letting go where we threw sparklers into a bonfire. So it was a little kind of a unique way to do that. But it was well attended. We had about 15, 20 people. The full moon failed to show up, but there was good food, good drink, good company.
Hey, so I had a female pheasant coming into my yard and feeding where I put out seeds for the birds. And she disappeared after that Arctic blast and she didn't come around and I was worried about her, but she was back today, bringing me great joy.
I'd like to share a joy. I overthink everything, and I'm married to somebody who never overthinks. And he's had estrangement with his two siblings, two sisters, who got mad at each other and refused to speak to each other. And because he wouldn't take sides, they didn't talk to him for 8 years. And the day before Christmas, I was doing something else and I walked in and my daughter was there, my adult daughter, and she said, "Mom, Dad just called his sisters." And he didn't make a fuss of it. He didn't make a thing of it. He just dropped the grudge. And it wasn't even a grudge that he had accepted. It was other people's grudges. So I'm just really, really joyful that I had that kind of partner.
We have someone on Zoom who wants to say something. Deborah, unmute yourself.
Yes, I'm happy to report that for the first time in 12 days, I've just tested negative for COVID.
Congratulations, Deborah. Well, for those joys and sorrows expressed and those we still may hold in our hearts, may we have a moment of silence. Blessed be. And now we're going to try the second hymn. Number 267, When Mary Through the Garden Went, and it's the same tune, so maybe we will do better this time. And following the hymn, Bob will be starting with a reading. 267, Rise in Body or Spirit, please. And I don't think we need to play it through once, we'll just, yeah, we got it down.
Good morning. The reading this morning is adapted from Ministry of the Future. It's a nonfiction science fiction novel. Nonfiction science fiction novel. Turn that over in your head for a while. By Kim Stanley Robinson. And the passage goes something like this. He writes, the 2000 Watt Society, which was started in Switzerland in 1998, it's a real thing, you can Google it right now and join if you'd like to. The 2000 Watt Society calculates that if all the energy consumed by households were divided by the total number of humans alive, each household would have the use of about 2,000 watts of power, meaning about 48 kilowatt hours per day. The society's members then tried living on that amount of electricity to see what it was like. And they found that it was by no means a form of suffering. To the contrary, those who undertook the experiment felt more stylish and meaningful than before. So, is there energy enough for all? Yes. Is there food enough for all? Yes. And is there housing enough for all? There could be. There's no real problem there. Same for clothing. Is there health care enough for all? Not yet, but there could be. It's a matter of training people and making small technological arguments and getting things where they need to be. So there's no planetary constraint on that one. Same with education. So all the necessities for a good life are abundant enough, and everybody alive could have them. Food, water, shelter, clothing, health care, education. Is there enough security for all? Security is the feeling that results from being confident that you will have all the things I just listed and that your children will have them too. So it's a derivative effect. There can be enough security for all, but only if all have security. If 1% of the humans alive control everyone's work and take far more than their share of the benefits of the work, while also blocking the project of equality and sustainability however they can, then that project becomes much more difficult. That goes without saying, except that it needs to be said. To be clear, there is enough for all. So there should be no more people living in poverty. And there should be no billionaires. Enough should be a human right, a floor below which nobody can fall, and also a ceiling above which no one can rise. Enough is as good as a feast, or even better. And arranging this situation is left as an exercise for the reader. If you're like me and have trouble meditating in silence, maybe you can arrange that one while we meditate in silence for a moment. I assume that all of you, or as we say where I come from, that you all would watch the news to some degree, and that you're already aware of the many problems facing humanity today. And I'd also imagine that many or most of you are aware that a sixth great extinction event is now underway. In the past 500 million years, 5 great extinctions have occurred. However, the current one is the first one to be caused by an animal species. And that species is Homo sapiens, we human beings who were charged by the Hebrew scribe with dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, and over everything, living thing that moveth upon the earth. First time I've used the King James Version in a long time. In reality, humans have been exercising that dominion for 10,000 years now, ever since we started growing our food instead of hunting and gathering it. Fast forward 10,000 years, and today, according to a 2019 UN report, it's from June 2019, just a couple of figures from that report. 3/4 of the landmass of the world and 2/3 of our marine environment has been significantly altered by human activity, and up to 1 million species, approximately 1/8 of the Earth's estimated total, are threatened with extinction, many of those within decades. The biggest conundrum in terms of problem solving, the conundrum is not just the challenges themselves, but the way that they're interconnected. That interconnectedness, the way they give rise to each other and support each other and result from each other, that compounds the difficulty of solving them. As one example of that interconnectedness, there was an article in the journal Science just this Thursday, written by scientists from the University of Alaska Fairbanks about their research using new methods and extrapolating to the personal. They found that within the lifetimes of my 2 grandnieces, little 5-year-old Eleanor and 3-year-old Amelia, Central Europe and North America will likely have almost no glaciers left. Think of going to I think it's Blue Glacier in the Olympic National Park 20 years ago, and walking into the crevasses of that from at the ground level, looking up in the crevasses of that big blue glacier, and to think, how could that be within 75 years? In bleak terms like that, we might feel like, well, there's nothing we can do, and become disheartened. Or we can become cynical, and as in, gee, why bother? But as UUs, we must face these problems, both as a matter of responsibility to our children and their children, and also as a responsibility to our own faith. That's where interconnectedness is at issue, that humanity is a part of ecology. Glacial loss on that extent is going to be more than about just missing glaciers. It will add more to sea level rise than we previously expected. It will threaten the supply of water for as many as 2 billion people, and it will increase poverty and refugee crises, and political instability and war. These problems are the business of UUs because they violate the principles that we agree to affirm and promote, at least 5 of the 7 of them. And there on your bulletin, you can see the connections between the climate problems and the 1st, 2nd, 5th, 6th, and 7th principles. But I'm not going to dwell on all these problems as problems this morning. My talk here instead is about the audacity of hope. In the face of all those problems, to be hopeful is audacious. The question for me, when I first saw that phrase, the audacity of hope, was, is it also realistic to hope? And we'll get into that. This is not about denial or about being a Pollyanna. It's an audacious hope that's a hope with a good estimate of the price for achieving it. That's what I want to offer this morning for your consideration. My main point today is that yes, we have gotten ourselves as a species and as a planet that we're interconnected with into a bind, but there are still ways out. The 2019 UN report that I cited a few minutes ago has some startling and scary numbers, but that same report concludes that transformative changes are needed to restore and protect nature, and that opposition from vested interest can be overcome for the public good. That's one of the conclusions, that the opposition from vested interest, acknowledged in the UN report, that opposition can be overcome. So what are those transformative changes, and how can we overcome powerful players very powerful players that blindly pursue the status quo. What would the price of hope be? And by what process can we achieve that audacious hope? One of the clearest and most convincing and yet enjoyable descriptions of that price and that process that I found is the pragmatic, science-based, guarded optimism of Kim Stanley Robinson, who's been writing science fiction since the early 80s. I've read 2 of his novels in the last few weeks, and I'm now in the middle of a third. It's the first time in many years that I've read 3 fiction books in a row. His books, though, are not just science fiction, not to demean the genre. I studied it in college for an arts elective as literature, and it can be that too. But these stand out. Novelist Jonathan Lethem writes that Robinson's novels are what I referred to before the reading, that they're the best science fiction nonfiction he's ever read. Think about that. It's science fiction because it's in the future, right? It's not so far, though, in the future here with Robinson. He doesn't project so far in the future that it becomes irrelevant to us today. And it's at the same time nonfiction because this guy actually goes to professional conferences where scientists and economists and psychologists and sociologists present on their research. And then he goes off and projects those ideas in his writings into the near future. So he builds on real science, stuff that's grounded in reality, both in technology and in the humanities. And I caught myself reading passages, including our reading about the 2000 Watt Society, and other passages about carbon sequestration methods and wildlife corridors, the Half Earth Project, which you can also Google, about converting the oil industry from pumping oil up to pumping CO2 back down, stabilizing glaciers by pumping up water to make them re-adhere to the bedrock and slow down their slide or their float towards the sea. About revolutionizing shipping and transportation, and I could go on. I've read about these things in his books, and I think, hey, he can't be for real. And then I Googled the idea, and there it is. Somebody's actually doing that, or else they're working on it, or at least they're thinking about it and talking with their peers about it. He does very little hand-waving that amounts to, well, science will find a way. And he does this not just in the sphere of science and technology, but also in the spheres of human relations and economics. There's a whole novel that he's got that focuses on economics. Doesn't sound that juicy, but it gets interesting. That's New York 2140, and I found it to be compelling. Land and water management, you name it, he addresses it. His bottom line is summed up nicely in a Scientific American book review. Yes, the world can be saved, but only at a cost that we've been unwilling to pay so far. His latest book, Ministry for the Future, is the first one I read, and it's essentially the story of a group of bureaucrats who are out to save the planet. Science fiction bureaucrats. And hence the title, Ministry for the Future. The actual ministry is an as yet to be created UN office. He says that it was created back in 2026, so it puts it about right now. Makes sense. Why not? Let's create one. That is a UN office that was set up to protect the rights of unborn citizens of the world. Think about it. The ministry's charge is to establish and protect the civil and legal rights of people who will exist, who will have rights in the future. Eleanor and Amelia's children. Yet, through the accident of time, those children, my great-great-grandnieces, don't have rights yet, even though they are already being impacted by the behavior of humans in the here and now. Why don't they have rights? They'll be as much people as we are. and we'll be as dead as they are unborn right now. We should be on equal legal footing. They should have a representative and advocate, just as abused children have a legal representative and advocate in a court of law now to look out for their rights. Think about it. Why shouldn't their children who are as yet unborn, why should they now be completely disenfranchised? Why should they have no rights whatsoever to a livable planet right up until the moment that they're born? And in the meantime, we hurry about destroying the planet that they hope to inherit. So it's on that premise that the fund begins in Ministry for the Future. And after disasters disproportionately affect their people, developing nations opt out of the Paris Agreement so they can take more drastic actions to slow down climate change. So there's tense negotiations, geopolitical brinksmanship, tedious engineering projects, a blistering critique of neoliberalism. It's all there. To turn the world around is not easy, but Robinson shows us specific ways that we can do it, if we will. To save the planet requires us to completely reimagine how human beings do business with each other. My dad used to tell me, if nothing changes, nothing changes. And in Robinson's world, for everything to change, we have to change everything. And so, speaking of everything, he addresses all the topics. They're interlinked, interconnected, interdependent. He weaves together the climate crisis, biodiversity, food and water management, land management, poverty and economic inequality, medical care and education, democracy and human rights, war, and perhaps the overarching one, population growth. That is, he demonstrates the converse of the compounding problem of interconnectedness that I mentioned at the beginning of this talk. The converse is that as we mitigate the individual issues, interconnectedness likewise enables compounding solutions. Relief on the primary issue decreases pressure on the secondary ones, and that in turn eases the strain on the tertiaries. So what I offer you this morning is not a book review, and it's not an exposition about current challenges. I'm simply here to assert that it's not too late. Not yet, anyway. We must not grow despondent. We must not give up. When I listen to too many podcasts or to too much morning edition, I can grow despondent and think that it is indeed too late, and indeed it will be if we continue unabated. But Robinson lays out a fictional path of realistic possibility that's consistent with the conclusions of that UN report, that transformative changes are needed, but opposition from vested interests can be overcome. The price for saving the world is not too high. It's just that we have not, to this point, been willing to pay it. Robinson's price is certainly not intended to be exactly accurate. It's fiction, after all, however rooted in reality it may be. But as a narrative, it provides a clearer and a more specific process for getting there than the UN report does and can. Implicit in his process, in his price of audacious hope, I find 4 important concepts: history, dominion, revolution, and faith. And in closing, I'd like to take a poke at his treatment of each of those concepts in turn. First, history. History is a central underlying theme in all of Robinson's works that I've looked at so far. Robinson would argue that we're not controlled by history unless we think we are, that it only becomes a prison if we build those historical walls around ourselves and isolate ourselves from those choices. Just because something happened that way doesn't mean it has to happen that way this time. Just because something has always happened that way, it only takes one time to break out of that cycle. If we don't change, though, and take control of history, taking control of history, if we don't do that, then it probably will happen the same way. But it's not easy. To live without habits is much more work, he says, than just to be a wage slave. To change history, we must reimagine our lives and our relationships and change them, That is hard work, but that's what's required if we are to survive and flourish among the stars, which we can. Robinson's second theme, to give a name to it, is dominion. He probably wouldn't use that word, but for me it fits. And I'm not talking about an ownership sort of dominion, a hastening judgment day approach that's preached by some evangelical Christians. Rather, the dominion humanity must charge itself, that I believe that the Hebrew scribe charged us with, was actually a dominion of responsibility, of being good stewards on this planet. As Vonnegut wrote with his tongue in his cheek, we are the eyes and ears of the creator of the universe. And I like to shorthand that to we are the eyes and ears of this planet. Third, Robinson's realistic pragmatism always seems to hold sway when the tension between interests comes to a head. That tension is generally resolved by some level of revolution, his third theme. Again, there's no spoiler alert needed here. I haven't told you whether it's going to be a violent revolution or one that employs milder means. It might vary from book to book, so you can still read if you want to without having the ending spoiled. But there is that word, revolution. A few months ago, I was visiting a UU church at the other end of Maryland, and a member and I were talking about income inequality, which I also want to preach on soon, maybe next. And she said, I think it's going to take a revolution to solve that one. And when she said that, I shuddered. It scared me. Perhaps it was the incongruity of this grandmotherly woman advocating revolution, or perhaps I just forgot she was a UU. But in the past few months, I have concluded that whatever revolution might mean, she is right. The poorest billion people, they have less wealth than the richest 10 people on the planet. Outlawing billionairism is simply not going to happen without a revolutionary upheaval in world politics and transnational economics. And finally, there's faith. Again, Robinson would probably never put it in these terms, but there is in his works an underlying theme of faith that we can all do this if we will do it together. Time and again, he puts me to mind of the Unitarian theologian James Luther Adams, who I've mentioned in this pulpit before, who redefined faith in UU terms. Adams wrote that faith is the certainty that we have everything we need to solve all our problems together. The certainty that we have everything we need to solve all our problems together. That is faith. And when we say to each other, keep the faith, what we're really saying is, remember, we have everything we need to solve all our problems together. You may have noticed that the tune for our second hymn this morning was a do-over, and I think you were primed for that. Nancy, thank you. And it's the same tune that was used for the first hymn. The first hymn we sang was For Flowers That Bloom About Our Feet, and it evokes the kind of world we can hope to pass on to our children's children by becoming willing and able to pay the price of the audacity of hope. In the second hymn, When Mary Through the Garden Went, in classic UU style, turned the Easter resurrection trope into a hymn of mourning her loved one, mourning with a U, with the interconnectedness of nature mourning and communing right alongside her. And the tune for both hymns was composed by the Lutheran composer Severus Gastorius, who sounds like a bellyache. He lived in the mid-1600s. Severus Gastorius, sorry. He lived in the mid-1600s, and maybe it's for that reason that he titled his tune Was Gott tut, das ist wohlgeten, which translates as whatever my God ordains is right. Ironic to find two hymns by that title in the UU hymnal, but wait, there's more. There is indeed a third hymn in our hymnal that uses this tune. It's number 344, A Promise Through the Ages Rings, and we will sing this hymn for for a transitional hymn to your response. Here you're going to find a resurrection hymn. It's a UU hymn that even if we believe even if we don't believe that individuated beings come back to life, it reminds us that we do live in a world where resurrections happen, where a promise through the ages rings for something always sings. So may we now rise in body or in spirit for hymn number 344, A Promise Through the Ages Rings.
Well, we're running a little on the late side, but we may have time for just one or two comments or questions. I'm going to take the lady before the general.
So one of your themes, Audacity of Hope, I have two quick stories that are good historical stories of hope. One is Rachel Carson, you guys probably know who that is, and the problems of DDT back in the past. It took time, but she helped us understand how bad that pesticide was, and we did away with it, not just in this country, but we collaborated with other countries and decided DDT was a bad thing. It's not here anymore. We've all seen eagles and osprey in our communities, and that's because as a broader world, we said, we're not doing this. Now we have other pesticide issues, but that was a success story. And the second one is our ozone layer. We have holes in our ozone layer, and in the 1980s, it got really, really scary, and we collaborated as a world. Governments came together and did away with CFCs. I don't know if anybody remembers, I think I was a teenager, and you couldn't buy aerosol hairspray anymore. Big change. We worked through it, the solutions were there, and as a big world, we collaborated, did away with many CFCs and started regulating others, and our hole is closing. If we didn't do that, we might not have an ozone layer, we wouldn't be here. So we do have, the solutions are there, like you said, and we just need to take them, and I think we've started, I think.
Thank you, Kim, that was great. Mine is not so astounding. When the price of gasoline went up because of the problems in Russia, How many have said, I hope it stays on because it will reduce the carbon imprint? We want it both ways. I myself would like to see $1 a gallon tax on gasoline. You have to pay taxes somewhere because that would change our habits. But were we always saying, well, I hope the price of gasoline stays on?
I'm sure Bob will be around after for more questions or comments, but we're going to move on with our final hymn of the day. This one's in your teal hymnal, number 1064, Blue Boat Home. Bob has our closing words, and then we will extinguish the chalice.
Thank you, Nancy. Our closing words are a riddle by Kim Stanley Robinson. This comprises all of in chapter 76, the book I referred to a lot. It's so short. A riddle. Everyone knows me, but no one can tell me. No one knows me, but everyone has heard my name. Everyone talking together makes something that seems like me, but is not me. Everyone doing things in the world is what makes me. I am blood in the streets, the catastrophe you never forget. I am the tide running under the world that no one sees or feels. I am in the present, but am told only in the future. And then they think that they speak of the past, but really they are always speaking of the present. I do not exist, and yet I am everything. You know what I am. I am history. Now, make me good.
Please join me as we extinguish the chalice. The words are in your order of service, and we'll follow with the benediction.
Extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of amendment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again.